Hello everyone and welcome to my midnight ramblings about a multitude of things, and today it's going to be about how the saying that I really don't like when people say to another person, you should know better because of their age. And so telling someone that you should simply just know better because you were old enough simply not to know implies that that person had in their formative years that space and that safety net and that time to delve into their imagination so that they could learn those lessons. But those lessons don't stop. Like, you don't stop learning how society works and what is imaginative and what is real and how you can process those things in both worlds. You don't stop learning that after you're like 13. In fact, I would even argue it's much harder to learn those things as you get older because we as a society have this incorrect idea that at some age, based off of a preconceived notion of how much knowledge and information you should have obtained, you should just know stuff. And if that were true, we wouldn't have school. If that were true, we wouldn't all be going for like several more years of schooling after high school. So I'm not really sure why we continue to say that. It certainly is not for anyone's benefit that we do that to one another. I think it's the opposite. It's quite detrimental to not allow people to role play into their 70s, for goodness sake. There's no situation to where you will know everything there is to know, not only about society and the world, but about yourself. Just a reminder that the Aging Journey podcast is a half social justice, half actual play podcast that is supporting the Reframing Aging Initiative. Please go show your support and learn all about reframing aging at reframingaging.org. If you grow up in a society that teaches you that there is no more imagination after a certain point, there is no point where that is healthy for you. Like, I don't know why we would ship that ideology as fact and not understand how that in itself is being detrimental to future generations who understand that learning is a lifelong endeavor. And I think we are seeing that in the monetization, honestly, of Dungeons and Dragons, because we still obviously have this thought of like, if you're doing something creative, make sure it's making money for you because you gotta live and whatnot. But at the same time, I think people are prioritizing fantasy roleplay games because they realize, particularly through the pandemic, that really allows you to delve into parts of yourself to create a very unique community and be engaged in that community is invaluable, especially when you find out that you can't get those things. Like we found out in the pandemic. That's one of the reasons why it's really boomed even more, is because people weren't able to have the community that they really wanted, or they lost the community that they had had for a long time. And that doesn't change. Like, people move, people change jobs. Like, as you grow as an adult, or even if you're younger and you've just moved a lot because your parents moved a lot, you constantly are losing connections with people. You're constantly learning as you go from childhood to adolescence to adulthood what it means to be you, how you can figure out how the world works and how you work in the world. And one of the greatest ways to do that, I think, is roleplay, either as like an evidence-based intervention and you're doing all of the steps to do that with a licensed professional, or with your friends. I think they are equally as proficient if you're able to find a really good DM and a really good group. So that is my rant on why I play tabletop role-playing games and some of the stigma that kind of surrounds playing these types of games as an adult, and then also a little bit about how we think about age and project what aging should look like on others. All right, I think I've rambled enough. Thank you all so much for listening to the Aging Journey podcast. This is a little tiny segment that I'll be doing once in a while called Midnight Ramblings, just to get things out of my head, and it will sound a little bit choppy and it'll be a bit rambly, maybe even a bit ranty. But I think that internal discourse is also just as important as external discourse. So I still consider us having a conversation. So thank you so much for joining me. As always, I will see you next time. You can find this podcast on the usual places you listen to podcasts, or you can go to shows.acast.com/Aging Journey Podcast and listen there.